posted time having arrived and a quorum of members present, I'll call the Public Health and Safety Committee for Monday, March 17th, 2025 to order. The first item on our agenda is to approve the minutes of our previous meeting from 2/17 of 25, copies of which were in the meeting packets. Did anyone note any revisions or adjustments that they need for the minutes?
I didn't have the minutes.
Oh, you do not have them complete? Okay. Then we will pull that item. We'll pull item 1, which is the minutes of our last meeting, and we will hold that for our April meeting. And so we'll take 2 sets on that day then. Okay. So we won't have to act on item 1. Item 2 is consider approval or denial of various license applications. You have a batch of those in your packet. The typical events that we typically see this time of year, most of which are repeat events. We do have some individual licenses that are recommended for denial tonight. The way our ordinance works, applicants that are recommended for denial have the right to address the committee and talk about things within their record that may be factually inaccurate. So the first one recommended for denial this evening is for Lakeem Gomez. Is Lakeem Gomez with us this evening? Let the record show he has not appeared. For next on our list is Kristen Vollmer. And Kristen, if you would like to come up and I guess talk with the committee. Is there, they've received a copy of the record. Is there anything in your record historically?
Also have this, this statement from my former probation officer that I would like the panel to review.
Okay.
If they would like to do that.
One of you needs to talk at a time.
For my rehabilitation and my restoration and my recovery.
Okay. That item would need to be provided to the clerk for the review. The police chief does the review of your materials. So if you want to submit evidence of rehabilitation, that would cause the committee to reconsider, or at least cause him to review that record again and decide if his recommendation is any different. But we don't do that on the fly.
Okay, well, I don't, here's the thing.
Who are you, sir? We need your name and address for
I'm
the record.
Matthew Vollmer, her husband,
Okay,
135 and a half Racky Street, same as hers.
okay.
So you guys are required to follow certain statutes as well, which were not followed, which was the reasons for denial and how her charges substantially relate to the sale of liquor, which you guys failed to do. And then also, she has a right to present evidence to you guys.
Correct.
Here at the hearing.
Yes, and we
Okay,
would
and-
accept,
And Matt Barnes,
if you, sir,
ma'am, I wasn't done talking.
I
You
can
made me
stop you
wait,
from
and
talking.
I would like to,
If
I
you
would
have-
like my turn to speak, ma'am.
Stop.
Just like you, no, you stop. You're not
Oh.
gonna sit here and take my minutes away
You're,
from me.
you're out of order.
I'm-
Take your seat.
How am I out of order, ma'am?
You are, because I'm the chair of this committee and
Oh.
I'm in charge here.
Okay, ma'am, that doesn't mean that you get to overrule our rights.
That's exactly what it means.
No, our constitutional
You
rights.
are not the
freedom
licensed
of speech,
applicant.
ma'am. Freedom of speech.
Take your seat.
I'm suing you.
Take your
You
seat.
will be sued.
Take your
I've
seat.
been recording this all.
Take your seat.
Yep.
Kristen, if you would like to present evidence of rehabilitation, you can pass it to Chief Barnes.
Oh, now she can. Now she can.
She is the applicant and we are dealing with her. If you can't,
She has a right, she has a right for me to stand up with her and.
If you can't
talk on her
behave-
behalf as well, ma'am.
if you can't behave, I'll call you out of order and show you the door.
How am I not behaving, ma'am?
Look at how you're acting right now.
Because you cut me off and you've been
You
very
are,
rude,
you are
ma'am.
the first
Ma'am,
person in
and you
18,
continue to cut me off, ma'am.
you are the first
Yep.
person in 18 years who's acted like this.
Okay.
Let me tell
Madam
you.
Chair.
Congratulations, everybody lets
You're-
you
you're
walk
done.
away
Madam
with
Chair.
rights, ma'am.
You're done.
I'm
Madam
done.
Chair, can we
Yes.
have the police escort this man out of chambers, please?
Forward.
Take your seat and keep quiet. This is not your application. Chief, did you get the letter from Kristen?
I'm in receipt of a letter. Yes, I received a document from her. I haven't read it yet.
Would you like us to defer to next month and then bring it back so you have time to review?
Recommendation, but I would also encourage Ms. Vollmer to connect with me, to discuss what rehabilitation looks like and what things to consider, because one letter from a probation agent really falls insufficient given the history that I saw here. That's not to say that rehabilitation hasn't occurred, but we can discuss other forms of evidence of rehabilitation that could sway the decision or recommendation.
Okay. So would you be amenable to that, Kristen? Connect with Chief Barnes. You guys can talk about what the evidence is that he would need to review. In that regard, then we could hold action on your application, and we could then act upon it at our next meeting, once you two have had a chance to connect and exchange information. Okay?
Yep.
All right. And so then this is not a denial for today. It's a hold until we have a little more time to get some extra information from you. And then you would be, you'll be on the agenda for the next meeting,
Okay.
which will be the third Monday of April.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for coming in.
You'll be hearing from us.
Next applicant is Taisha Payton. Come on up.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi.
And so do you have things that you've noted on your record that are factually inaccurate?
No.
Okay. And so the committee has received a summary of the record, and that record also meets the criteria for denial. Do you have evidence of rehabilitation that you wish to submit?
I brought a letter from my current probation officer, and I brought my mother, who was victim of the crime, and also my acting manager right now. And do I give?
You can bring it up to the chief. That's right. That's right. Yes, sir.
I'd make the same recommendation that I did with the last individual, which is I would encourage you to reach out to me so we can discuss what evidence of rehabilitation could look like to build the best opportunity for a different recommendation.
I can also provide the numbers of my supervisors, because I work for the county, Marathon County. I can also provide my supervisors I've worked for the past couple of months, and my actual boss, and my doctors and stuff that I've been working with my mental health and stuff like that.
So all
Yeah,
evidence
all
of
that.
rehabilitation and all
Okay.
would be good, and we'll just talk about how to effectively present that to us so it can be considered for a recommendation to the committee.
So then does she, I'm so sorry, just to clarify, does she just give you a call and we can set up a time to get you that stuff, or?
Yes, I'll tell you what, somewhere in this bag, I think I have a business card. And
Okay.
since you are so polite in your communication with us, I'm willing to give it to you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, and so then what we'll do is we'll hold action on your application as well, and we'll just leave it on the agenda for our next meeting.
Okay.
And between now and then, you guys can get together.
Okay.
And then we will be happy to consider that item.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for coming in.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Okay, and then, so that was the denial recommendations. The rest are events, most of which have occurred previously. They're annual events. And there's a renewal recommendation for the Class B for the Woodchucks at Athletic Park. That license has also been issued in the past. And with no objection, I would entertain, with the exception, because we're going to leave two off, so with the exception of Kristen Vollmer and Tisha Payton, I would accept a motion to accept or deny licenses as recommended by staff.
I'll
with-
make the motion to accept.
Okay. Motion from Larson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second from Lukens. And then we'll make sure we note in the minutes that the other two will be back next month for reconsideration, or initial consideration once they have documentation in. That said, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None are opposed. That item carries. That takes us through the licensing item. Item 3 is discussion and possible action regarding a letter of concern for compliance issues at Jalapenos. It came to our attention, I believe, last month, that Jalapenos is closed and has not been open. And I think that in some subsequent checks, the establishment has not been open or continuing to be open. This is the first step in a process whereby The prior owner, can either surrender the license, or we can take steps to get that license back, because obviously there's people who want them, and businesses that aren't open and have no plan to get open and stay open can't sit on them. Do you have any updates, Cody or Caitlin, on your interactions with the premises at all?
We spoke to the business owner, Jose, I believe that was in early February.
Prior to.
Or it was late January, prior to them closing on February 1st, around there. And then we spoke to Tony Gonzalez, who was trying to help him translate to make sure he understood what the state and the city of Wausau laws were regarding it. That was a couple weeks ago. So they are well aware of the March 1st deadline for them to open, so they don't fall in violation of the 30-day abandonment ordinance.
Okay. And do we know if since the 1st of March, have they been open at all?
I couldn't sit here and tell you if we've checked every single day, but our officers have been keeping an eye on it, and they've yet to see it open since our last meeting.
Okay. So then our next step in that process really, I think, would be to summon the owners to our next meeting, have an interaction with them about what their plans are. I think they know, and certainly should be told that, they don't just sell the license with the business and then transfer it that way, that there needs to be a surrender and a reapplication process if they're intending to transfer ownership. But if it's just going to sit closed and they're not planning to open or reopen, then I think we have to give them the opportunity to surrender the license. If they don't want to surrender it, then we will take steps to reclaim it if we need to. So I guess if we could send them a letter and invite them to the April meeting.
We can do that.
Okay. And committee members, you're amenable to that? Bring them in next month and see what the plan is? Heads are nodding. I think we're good. Okay. So we'll agree by consensus on that. We don't have to vote on that action. Item number 4 is an update on requests for proposal for night shelter from Wausau Police Department. Chief Barnes has an update from us. He and Alder McElhaney are both serving on the joint city-county task force group that's kind of working on this issue. So I think it's great that we can get a quick update from them as far as what's happening. I know we've read a few things in the media about some collaboration, which is kind of exciting. So we'll turn it over to you first, Chief.
Sure, thank you very much. First, I know we've shared this information with most of the council, if not all of it, but the Marathon County Board of Supervisors voted to, in essence, partner with the city of Wausau in regards to night shelter and shelter services by authorizing up to $200,000 in the year 2025, and then to use their regular budget process for 2026 to be able to do that again. So I have sat down and had several meetings with the county administrator in regards to what the priorities of the county are in regards to this RFP, as well as representing the city's needs and interests in regards to that RFP. Additionally, as was requested when the City of Wausau funds were allocated, I spent an entire morning, which was very educational to me, at the CPC, having one-on-one, actually, Tracy was along with that and facilitated and identified those individuals and invited them to meet with me. And I would just say, I think it takes some fortitude for people who recently have left homelessness or are experiencing homelessness and spending the night in the shelter to sit down with the police chief to get asked questions about what does successful shelter look like through their eyes, and what type of things and how could shelter positively impact, like what could be different that would help them and assist them in their journey. I'll be honest with you, the answers that I received surprised me. The amount of accountability in services in general in the community that they discussed, they felt like a lack of accountability unanimously. Every single person I talked to said, if there were more accountability with this, I might be farther along in my journey to leave homelessness. Or one individual who said to me, I won you can correct me, you just nod in the negative if I'm misquoting. He said, I won the Section 8 lottery. And so I went from homelessness to I'm housed right now and these needs of mine are being met. And I said, well, okay, let's think back to when you were in shelter. And it just caught me off guard to hear him say, when we talked about, what if there was a time limit and you had to make progress and participate and receive services, or there was going to be a period of time where this wasn't available as we consider that concept. And he said, boy, if that existed, I would have left homelessness a long time ago. And I think it's more complicated than that, but that really caught me. Additionally, conversations about what respect in their eyes looks like and what it feels like to be in shelter, some of the challenges to be really working on sobriety and maybe be sleeping 18 inches away from someone who's far from sober. I gave that some thought, and that just made sense to me, as well as when speaking to some of the women who are experiencing or have experienced homelessness. Their lack of feeling safe in a shelter that does not segregate men and women. So took a lot of notes, very thought-provoking. So that information, as well as working with the county, led to what you see in your packet, which is the RFP that we came up with, as well as a letter that begins to explain that sheltering is really but one spoke in the wheel of what we're trying to accomplish when we look at what a total model looks like for this area and who would be involved in that partnership. And so that was published. The date that they need to be submitted by is March 28th, with an opening at the Board of Public Works on April 2nd. And then at that point in time, we will have a small group of individuals to get together that includes both county employees and city employees to evaluate what proposals that we do have, compare that to the finances, grade them, and select a proposal if appropriate. We don't know what that's going to look like or what's going to be proposed, so it would be premature to discuss that. But I think it's an exciting time. I think we're in the best position we've been in to provide those services in a long time with county partnership. I'm very grateful for that. So that is my update.
Me too. I love to see that collaboration take flight between city and county. I think that we can accomplish much more together than we can separately. I think that once there is, whatever proposals result from the request, and there's a recommendation, if you say you have to whittle those down a bit, assuming that a recommendation gets made for which proposal to pick and which one to fund, I assume that recommendation would come from the task force, right? I mean, would you take the proposals back to the task force, or would you take them to the individual city, county
I think,
entities?
well, as I understand the direction we've been given through resolutions, for the county, that decision rests with their administrator
It
and
does,
whoever
okay.
he would put on the team. My understanding is the decision on the city's end rests with myself and whoever else from the city would be on the team to evaluate those proposals.
Okay.
I don't think the awarding of funding to a proposal or proposals requires any committee or council action. But I think we'd be naive if we didn't use the resources that were available to us to get additional thoughts on proposals and what that might look like. So as long as, we're not going to postpone moving forward with a project to wait for a meeting to occur.
Right.
But if convenient and possible, I think utilizing the task force or any committees for the city that have an interest in it just makes sense.
Right, especially if our shelter model is running out May 1st, obviously time is of the essence, and so that makes sense. I just wanted to make sure that we all had the right notion of what the process was, what the approvals might need to look like if there were any, if we needed to expedite the schedule. But if the resolutions are clear in the process that you need to follow to secure the service, I think that makes sense.
I think the one thing, since people may be watching this meeting on YouTube, I said proposal or proposals because I think the potential exists that more than one proposal could be accepted and funded. And I say that as some of the things we learned in our conversations, or I learned in the conversations with individuals, which is if somebody wanted to have more of a niche type shelter that maybe served women only or served individuals who are impaired at the time in which they need shelter. I think we're very open and very interested to look at what those type proposals would look like.
Okay, yeah. I mean, if it yields some kind of multifaceted solution, that's a plus as well. Anything else from the task force? It sounds like you guys are really making some progress. Anything from Alder McElhaney? Go ahead.
The next task force meeting is Wednesday. Chief Barnes worked on a report, and the county has a report, and we will present a report, which basically goes over the timeline. This wasn't done in what gets me, or what has really opened my eyes is the county, meaning the county supervisors, really didn't understand what was happening, the data involved. And I found that from the beginning, working with the co-chair, Ron Cavelli. I met with him earlier before a task force started, and he had no really knowledge. He knows they're unhoused, but had no idea of the numbers and our timeline. How did this start? When did council become involved? What were our steps? So that will all be presented. I think education is so important. I think that knowing where we're coming from, where we were, the tiny steps we're making, and now where we want to go, I think that will help us go beyond the shelter into the intermediate and then the long-term goals.
Sure. I think that's huge. It's also helpful. I think sometimes it was easy for us to assume, whether it was in the context of a committee of the whole or even in our, just general discussions that we had around the council table. I think it's easy for us to assume that people know all that we know about what's happening and to whom and where. And, we have been kind of all submerged in this for a number of years. And, I think sometimes we've been unnecessarily critical and harsh towards our partners down at the county, because I think there was just not the same level of information sharing that we've seen now since we've had this collaborative group come together and work to understand one another. So I think that's going to breed good outcomes. I'm excited about that. Matt?
I would just share in that lane that after receiving presentations and listening to Supervisor Covelli speak, and they gave me the opportunity to speak to the county board, which is much larger than the 11 people that are here. But when the time came to take a vote to allocate this funding, which my recollection is comes out of their reserve fund, it was one vote shy of unanimous with that whole group. So I wish I could tell you, it was 30-something to 1, Cody, maybe. I know a couple people weren't there, but it had resounding support from that board. And again, I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. That speaks volumes that, we have support. I think so often there's a perception that there maybe is, division between urban interests and perhaps rural interests. And that's not necessarily true if that was what the vote was. I think it's just a matter of everyone coming together to understand each other. And this, I think, task force is really going to go a long way, I think, to build that bridge. So excited about that. Anybody else have any questions about that task force or the RFP? This was really just an update. We don't need to act. I think we're good. We'll place that report then on file. Item number 5 is discussion and possible action on approving amendments to the special event policy and the special event application to implement the $1 public safety fee. You'll recall, as a result of our 2025 budget work, one of the revenue-generating components of the 2025 budget was a recommendation from Finance that we figure out the implementation for the public safety fee that they are going to assess to special events that sell admission tickets that present a need for a large amount of either overtime or standby from our public safety departments. So $1 out of each ticket would go to cover those expenses. Every year we do incur a substantial amount of both standby and overtime to staff events. And the community loves events. There's no question that it's time well spent, but it's also super expensive. So what we did was we asked the clerk's office and the staff team and our city attorney to go back and take a look and figure out what we would need to change in terms of our application process and our policy surrounding events to make sure that event organizers are aware of this and that we're able to charge for it and collect it properly. So that's the item that we have in front of us. And, I guess, Caitlin, did you want to walk us through, I guess, what your work internally has looked like? I know you guys have had a couple of meetings to figure out kind of where we would need to go to get this done.
Yeah, so last fall with approving the 2025 budget, you all approved the dollar, or just after that, you approved the dollar per ticket fee for special events that require police and/or fire services. So we as a staff felt that we did not need an ordinance change at this time to implement this fee. Instead, we amended our special event policy to add in the fee on page, what page is this? On page, I think it's on the top, page 3 of the policy to add in that dollar per ticket fee and some language about how that would be collected. So the process will work is that after their event, we have an online form that we're finalizing with IT where the outside event organizer can fill out that form with how many tickets they either sold or gave away. And then we would then invoice them for that fee that they would be paying after their event is done. So there would not be any refund if the event would be canceled or not, but they would report that online. And a ticket is a ticket, regardless if it's an adult ticket, a child ticket, or it's sold
Sure.
or given away.
And your permitting and accounting software allows you to track the billing and the collection of the money.
Our ERP software
Right.
would be able to track
Mary Ann's
that,
nodding,
yeah.
so that's good. I think when we published the 2025 fee schedule, that fee was already in there too. So it's just a matter of making all of our processes internally sync up here. Anything, Ann, that you'd like to walk us through with regard to this work?
Nope, you did a good job explaining it, Caitlin.
The
Go
one thing
ahead.
I have is that it would go in effect to any events after this would be approved by council.
Sure. And our event season really is just getting to the start of the kickoff with spring and summer events is really the gist of it. So event organizers, I know are aware of it. They sat in on the budget meetings when it was discussed. We did issue some clarification as far as, what events we're talking about. It's certainly not the smaller things. I don't believe it's not concerts on the square. It's the ticketed events where people are buying an admission ticket to get through the gate. And so that's,
Correct. I believe the police chief and the deputy police chief have talked to event organizers already, so that way they're aware of this fee.
perfect. Perfect. Sarah?
So it's going to be applied to free events too? So even if there's not?
No.
Okay, so that's
Admission fees.
whether free or sold?
If the tickets are given away.
Oh, so there has to be tickets that are going
Right,
to cost
admission
a
tickets.
user
Yeah.
money? Okay.
So, yeah, but free events, such as like Concert on the Square is a great example. They're not doing it for that. I mean, originally, there was some concern that, I think, among the public that we would. And the Finance Committee backed away from that during its budget discussion and decided the ones that charge the admission actually are the largest ones that really need it. Go ahead, Chief.
I just want to clarify that, Alder Watson, that language is in there, and we discussed this at length, because some events and some multi-day events have sponsors or other individuals who are partnership and other organizations where there are blocks of tickets that there's no revenue for, that are being funded in some other source, and trying to differentiate between what kind of ticket is this versus what kind of ticket is that. A ticket is a ticket seemed to be the cleanest and easiest way to do that. Just like one ticket for a multi-day event, where I'll just use the fair as an example, where you can buy a pass that gets you multiple days into the fair. That's one ticket, and it's $1, as opposed to trying to split any of those things up. So there's just a couple of events where we think that would apply. So
Sure.
hopefully that clarifies that.
Okay. Any other questions on that event policy or the event application? I mean, they're really cosmetic changes, but just to true everything up. If not, is there a motion to then approve the change to the policy and the update to the application?
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion from Larson. Is there a second? Second from McElhaney. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? None are opposed. That motion carries. Item number 6 is a presentation on equipment and technology for special events, and we have Deputy Chief Baton here for that. He's prepared a PowerPoint presentation for us.
All right, I'm only up here right now because we didn't know that it was going to be up on here, so I can come down here or whatever is going to be easier.
You're fine right there. If you're comfortable there, we can listen just fine. So.
All right. Perfect. Let me preface this just by saying this isn't, I don't come here with a specific ask or anything like that. This is some foundational information, just so the committee members have sort of a baseline understanding of some of these technologies that are out there right now that are being used to enhance public safety at these types of events. So the previous agenda item was a really good lead-in to this topic. Because like you said, these events here in Wausau, these are a gem of our community. It's definitely something that we take very seriously. The parades, outdoor markets, festivals, things like that, that is kind of part of the lifeblood of the community. Brings us together, definitely. But these events that we love so much, as we consider them, we really can't afford to ignore sort of these inherent dangers that could exist through a vehicle breaching a pedestrian area, whether that's through a medical issue or negligence or even malicious intent. So, Cody, do I just tell you? Oh, there we go. So here's some contemporary examples. We have 2021 Waukesha parade tragedy, several fatalities there. A vehicle was deliberately driven through the crowd. 6 individuals lost their lives. Scores of people were injured. The next slide. Going back a few years before that, this was in New York City, 2017. Again, a vehicle used as a weapon along a bike path, killing 8 individuals, injuring more. And then we have one more on the next slide. This is a much more contemporary example from New Year's Day of this year, in which I guess what I would describe as more of a lone wolf attacker driving a vehicle, a truck, through a crowd of revelers on Bourbon Street in New Orleans and killed, I believe it was 14 individuals and injured about 60. So these incidents they're devastating, they're horrific, and they remind us that we can't predict every danger, but maybe we can try to prepare a little bit better. So that's what this material is meant to do today. So let's go to the next one. And so one of those things that I want to highlight, probably for the bulk of this information, is this idea of mobile vehicle barrier systems. So if this is something that is new to you, this is a proven solution. It's been around for a little while, used to enhance the safety of outdoor events. Think kind of like these concrete jersey barriers that you'll see at construction sites or along highways or whatnot, or special events, but in a much more mobile, more quickly deployable fashion. And I think by investing, or at least considering investing in this technology, the city could really send a pretty strong message that our citizens, our visitors are really our top priority. So if we go to the next page here, we'll kind of see what's currently being done. So by way of parades in our area, we have a few different parade routes that we've used throughout the years, depending on what event that is. We've used more recently, a mixture of police vehicles, of some heavy equipment from DPW that have been used to block key intersections to try to impede other vehicular traffic from coming into those areas. However, westbound traffic on the Stewart Avenue parade route, namely so the holiday parade, westbound traffic is still moving. There's definitely some issues, some safety issues with that we'll get into in a little bit here. And then additionally, we do use a sizable amount of PD staff, emergency police volunteers that are assisting at some of those key intersections. So that's what's being done with parades. And if we go to the next slide, we also have a 400 block. We've recently seen some concrete bollards that were added on the east side to enhance safety. That's definitely a good thing. That augments the already existing concrete planters that were on the north side there along Scott, which definitely offers some protection there. And then for some of the other events, we have pedestrian crossing assistance in the form of our emergency police volunteers. You see a photo there of a wooden barricade, some orange cones that at times doesn't really offer much of it's more of a visual deterrent or guide, if you will. And then we certainly have been using city vehicles as barriers, again, at some of those key intersections. So what would we really be looking at if we're talking what are our overall safety needs for the form of this conversation? So if we click there, Cody. If we use that holiday parade route from Marathon Park to the 400 block as sort of the baseline just for this conversation, we're looking at about 700 feet, linear feet of open intersections that would sort of converge on that route. Now, we'll cut that down a little bit. It's kind of a bigger number. Don't be too alarmed by that. Arts and other outdoor festivals that we host throughout the year. Certainly our 400 block events. We have several demonstrations. Some of them are planned. Some kind of spring up without any planning, and this could help with that. Road projects. I know we've seen in recent months how we have some of our DPW workers. They're down working on a water main break, and yes, there's vehicles parked around. We try to shut off some streets. We want to create a safety zone for them. This is another application for that. And just other emergency incidents, situations that come up where we need to secure a safe working area for individuals, city workers. So in looking at vehicle barrier systems, I looked at sort of three main vendors right now. I looked at the products, rather, from different vendors. So the Archer 1200 is from Meridian. I looked at the Pitagon F18, which is a product by a company called ARX. And then this MVB 3X is from MIFRM. The MVB 3X is actually the third generation, if you will, from MIFRM. It sounds like they've been in this, sort of in this game a little bit longer, if you will. They started with their MVB, or mobile vehicle barrier, then they had the 2, and now they're out with the 3X. And then additionally, I reached out to a handful of different municipalities that I was made aware are using some of these different barriers. So Green Bay, Waukesha, Stillwater, Minnesota, and then individuals from Cheyenne, Wyoming. So if we just look at these three, starting with the Meridian Archer, just give you some of the basics on it again, so you have a foundational understanding of what these systems are meant to do and how they function. The Meridian Archer is really truly more like a mobile bollard system. It's just dense weight, 700 pounds per unit. They can be attached by a reinforced steel cable, these 4-foot arrestor cables, so you can kind of string several of them together to have a combined weight and stopping power if a vehicle were to drive into that area. They do offer custom trailer kits that are equipped with hydraulics to raise and lower it because of that weight there. The thing that is nice about the Archer that they tout is that these units are reusable. If they get smashed into by a vehicle, you just pick them back up again. It's very, very solid and very, very dense. And then here's a brief video. Hopefully it'll play. That's just going to kind of show you the mechanism of operation of these systems. So this is the Archer system, if it'll play. So you can see there is some penetration into that area, but it's designed, they kind of measure it by meters, like how far that vehicle can, penetrate into a pedestrian zone if that were set up there to stop it. So with those cables attached, it's that combined weight, kind of wraps around, stops that vehicle. I think there's just one more image of maybe a larger vehicle as well. You can see the vehicle still can move into that area a bit. I guess it depends on what type of vehicle is being used. But I would think considerable damage would be accomplished if a vehicle came at that at any speed. Some other considerations with the Archer system on the next slide is it does require a specialty hauler and a tow bar, almost like sort of this custom dolly type of thing that connects to it because it is so heavy. Overall, seems to offer a little bit less linear foot coverage than some of these other systems do. There's kind of some mixed reviews from the different agencies that I spoke to. Let me see if I can find it here. I know Green Bay does have some of these, the Archer 1200s. They weren't necessarily a giant fan of them, mainly because of the weight, is what they were saying. But Cheyenne, Wyoming uses them for quite a few events throughout the year, and they had nothing but good things to say about it. So it was a good solution for them, and maybe not for another community. They're about $6,500 per unit. So $90,000-ish for a trailer kit that comes with 8 units. That's going to give you about 50 feet only of coverage, linear feet. So we're looking at, if we're assuming these numbers are pretty accurate, it's tough to find kind of accurate numbers. It's about $1,800 per linear foot to get the coverage that you would want. So that's the Archer. So the next one is the Pentagon F-18. You can see engineered. It certainly looks different, considerably lighter, 85 pounds per unit. Can be deployed pretty quickly. Like they say, a 30-foot barrier can be set up in about 15 minutes. They've tested it under a lot of different conditions, road surfaces, offset impacts, things like that. Can be moved pretty quickly, and they also offer custom trailer kits. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see a brief video on this. You'll see that the functioning is a little bit different, whereas the Archer just kind of relied on its sheer weight to stop a vehicle. These, because they're considerably lighter, they're designed like this open L, so a vehicle would drive at this L shape, if it'll play here. And once it tips this L over, the shorter part of it kind of pops up underneath there as the top part digs into the asphalt or into the ground. Unlike the Archer, these would not be multi-use. Once it gets rammed into, you would have to replace at least those that were struck. The nice thing about these is, again, they are very configurable. It seems to be they can come in multi-unit kits that are able to be purchased. I think there's a little bit more in the next slide. Yeah, so about $107,000 for a 36-unit kit, which gives you about 60 feet of coverage. So Minnesota, the gentleman that I spoke with there, indicated that their community had a 54-unit trailer kit, plus they purchased an additional 31 just separate units that they store in some other way, like a storage container or something. And that was just a little over $200,000, gave them about 140 feet of coverage for their events throughout the year. So a little bit cheaper, so maybe about $1,650 to $1,700 per linear foot for this option. And then if we go to the third one, this is the MIFRAM, the MVB-3X. This is the lightest one. Again, this is one that's been around a little bit longer, so maybe they've played around with some different design ideas, engineering ideas. Similar to the Pentagon in design, they're individual units connected by these kind of crossing bars that have pins that attach. No special tools are needed. You can use them on multiple terrains, whether it's gravel, grass, sand, whatever, asphalt. Again, similar to the last one, very easily configurable, and you can get these custom kits as well. And in the video here, you'll see this is a much better representation of how I think these are truly engineered to lift and stop a vehicle coming at it in pretty short order. Apologize for the little build up here. I think they're trying to build some anticipation for us as we're watching. So that is a little bit more design what it's designed to do is once that L shape tips over, there is kind of some pointed areas, edged areas on that top that will dig into the ground and then get up under that undercarriage of the vehicle trying to breach, and can just flip it right up in the air and stop it. And again, single use, similar to the last one. So for the MIFRAM, for the MVB-3X, it's about $180,000 for a 72-unit trailer kit, which gives you about 120 feet of coverage. This is the lightest option. It's tested to stop up to pretty decent size, think like a U-Haul, like a box van, a larger moving van or something like that. Probably comes in, if my math is sort of correct, at about $1,500 per linear foot, which makes it a little bit cheaper than some of the other ones, but just some things for us to think about. So if we look at the next slide here, this is it's not a great image, I apologize for this, but maybe you can see those yellow and red dashes there along the parade route. This is what we've used in the last couple of years to provide some type of scene security for the holiday parade. Each of those yellow and red dashes represent either a police vehicle, a squad car, or a DPW vehicle. So because westbound traffic was still operating and moving, those vehicles were parked at the intersections kind of parallel with the median there. Now, that doesn't prevent a westbound vehicle from just driving over the median into that parade. So looking at this now and thinking, well, that's probably a little less effective. We certainly are doing what we can. There's a visual show of a lot of vehicles and individuals out there, but that's what we've been doing recently. So if we look at the next slide, excuse me. So still using a combination of vehicles, police vehicles, and some type of a barrier system. That yellow with red outline dash represents a component of a barrier system that could be set up, and the little stars there represent a police vehicle that could be parked at some of these more key intersections. So shutting down westbound traffic, diverting it north onto North First Avenue, I think would create a safer situation there, and then having some type of a barrier system that could be utilized. So you saw that at the beginning. I started off with 700 linear feet is what all those open intersections sort of add up to. Now, that represents more of a curb to curb. The likelihood of needing it curb to curb isn't really, you really need to just cover a good chunk of those lanes there. So probably looking maybe closer to like 450 to 415 linear feet. So for example, if we use the MVB 3X, that would be maybe 3 of those 72 unit trailer kits, which is about $540,000, plus 1 or 2 of their 16 unit boxes, which are about $30,000. So just some food for thought there. Some different options here. Again, this isn't, I'm not coming here with an ask, but just more things for consideration, and I'm sure that you would be able to come up as policymakers with a lot of other different options, but perhaps a phased approach would be an option for a municipality. Purchase a trailer kit or some of these units 1 year and augment that in subsequent years. In our case, potentially using surplus from those special event ticket surcharges. We talked about that originally in the discussions, but that certainly could take some time for a surplus to even be built up. Cost sharing with local partners, regional partners, that just would mean that we would have to find some willing partners that are like, hey, we'll go in halvesies with you on this, and then sort of coordinate so you're not having overlapping events. And you're like, hey, we're going to do our parade on such and such a day, you do yours the next weekend. That's a potential as well. And then I have some of the individuals, the municipalities that I've talked to, have seen some success with that bottom option, which really is to purchase it outright, a system, and then rent it to other partners. For example, Cheyenne, Wyoming, they've done this, it sounds like, at least once or twice, where for the Rose Parade out in Pasadena, they had sent out sort of a call for anybody, any municipality around that had barrier systems that they'd be willing to rent to them. And so for $10,000, the city of Cheyenne had an individual, whether that was an officer or a DPW employee, somebody drove a trailer out there. It was like, sure, you can use this for, that weekend or whatever, and then brought it back. And so thus they were able to sort of recoup some of those funds. So in our case, maybe that's something, an event like the NFL draft in Green Bay. I don't know what their needs are going to be, but just throwing that out as for example.
They need them way sooner than we're going to have them.
Yes, exactly. But a comparable large event like that,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So in addition to the mobile vehicle barriers, which are, kind of the more conspicuous piece to this here, I think there are a couple of other things that could be considered or implemented to further enhance safety at these special events or impromptu gatherings or things like that. So one of those would be updated or augmenting our drone program. Not really sure how well known the police department drone program is. I would consider it sort of still in its fledgling state of sorts, but we do have a growing cadre of certified pilots. We are finding more and more applications for drone use, drone deployment as time goes by. So the drone use for us, if we can go back one, definitely enhances our ability to monitor like a large area or a large crowd, monitor the safety of that. The drone can be deployed in a matter of minutes by trained personnel, and it really has proven to be pretty effective in scene assessment, search and rescue, and things of that nature, as we can see in one of these next slides here. So the current drone that we have is the DJI Mavic 2 Dual, which is a thermal drone. The image on the right there is an actual image from a stolen vehicle case that our officers investigated, in which 2 individuals fled from officers, were hiding down at the edge of the river, down an embankment under some underbrush. A drone pilot that worked a night shift was able to get the drone up over the river. We knew they were in that area, turned on the thermal imaging, and was able to see we have two individuals, or what appear to be two individuals, hiding down in that area, and was able to direct officers right into that area and apprehend them. So a proposal would potentially be to update the Mavic 2 with the latest iteration, which is the Enterprise Mavic 3, which is, if we can go back one, also a thermal camera. It has the opportunity to mount some spotlights on it, speakers as well. So let's say somebody is trapped somewhere or lost, or maybe they're out on ice or they're disoriented to a certain degree. You could fly a drone out to them. You can communicate with them through pre-recorded messages telling them help is on the way. You could have a spotlight up in the air, provide some additional scene security and oversight. And those are about $7,000 with a kind of what they call a Fly More bundle, extra batteries and propellers, and a 2-year warranty plan that comes with it. Addition to the drone, this would really be a game changer, is a tether system. These are becoming increasingly more popular as their value is recognized. A tether system allows for continuous power to be provided to that drone, so there's not a need to bring that drone down every 30 to 40 minutes to change a swap out a battery. Sometimes it's shorter than that, depending on how windy it might be out, if the drone has to work pretty hard to stay up there, stay stable. So a tether unit can be powered off of a generator or some other power supply, and will allow for those extended and sometimes even unlimited flight times. So let's say you have the fair, we have our command trailer that's parked there. We could put the drone up and monitor the midway, and now we catch word that maybe there's some type of an altercation near the grandstand and groups of kids are running from there. Now we have eyes already up there. We can see which direction individuals, potential subjects, witnesses, victims are heading. We can have a drone pilot that can talk officers right in to hold those individuals accountable, or at least learn more about what had happened. These tethered units, they vary in style and in price. The one that I popped up here was this Valerius V-Line. Gives you about 230 to 330 foot tether length and runs anywhere from $11,000 to $16,000 depending on the power output. So those are just some of the options that wanted to throw out there and consider. And I think by just having that information in the back of our minds, I think it allows us to not just kind of sit back and wait for a tragedy to occur. Unfortunately, the one in Waukesha that hit pretty close to home, that's definitely one that we can look to. I know that Waukesha has since purchased and implements a vehicle barrier system at all of their functions now, parades and outdoor gatherings. And I think by doing this, it's going to send a pretty strong message again that we're not going to be vulnerable, and that our citizens and our visitors to our functions here are of utmost importance to us. Any questions at all?
Just a couple. So I think there's value in talking with our neighboring communities and neighboring law enforcement agencies to see if there's interest in, collaboration, either on the use or the purchasing. The bollards that were installed along the east side of the 400 block actually started in this committee. We were talking about safety and the fact that someone could, hop up in the curb in front of the Grand and cause quite a bit of damage in the interior of the block before anything would slow them down. That led to a CIP request that got funded, and those are in now. So obviously, event safety is something that we've been mindful of. I think that at least, I guess depending on where we're at with cost, I think, first, any sort of a purchase like this is a CIP request. So obviously, it has to get submitted and ranked and, fight for itself amongst all of the other things that everyone's asking for, next year or the year after. This, I think, is something that could be a phased implementation, whether you get them, all at once or you get half and half or whatever it might be. I think the committee would have to work their way through that. But I think that prior to CIP starting in the summer, it would be worthwhile to have conversations with those other agencies, see if there's some interest in maybe collaborative or cooperative purchasing, so that we could articulate, if the committee decides that it wants to make a recommendation, that you pursue that type of request through CIP, that you could at least articulate to that committee when you get there, like what the funding might look like. I think we all recognize that parade safety is a big deal. I think we had talked about at some point, the chief was talking about maybe allowing only one parade route. Right now, we have a few. A couple of them are really difficult to police, especially the Third Avenue one. But, obviously, if you have one dedicated route and it's easier to control that route and it's easier for parade planners to understand where they start and finish, I think when any plan like this is in its infancy, it may take a hybrid approach of deterrence and what you're using today to cover the 7. We have a lot of linear footage to cover and a ginormous price tag. So, I think there's value in, especially vehicular deterrence. I mean, the fact that you already have a working drone, that, maybe is something for the future, but we really don't have a lot of vehicular deterrent right now. That's something that, at least I find intriguing to know more about. I hate to go it alone on the purchasing because there's other communities that have the same risks and the same problems. All communities have events, and the top 2 Christmas parades or holiday parades happen here and 15 miles to the south. So, if there was some cooperative effort where everyone could benefit, that really would make some sense. So, Chief.
Yeah, just a couple of additions. First, from my perspective, there is no longer a Third Avenue parade route. I have met with, that's historically the Labor Day parade. I met with the Labor Council 2 times, including Randy Radke, who seems to be the chair of that today, when we provided him with some maps of the area. They really want to end at the Labor Temple, so we're trying to find ways to utilize a portion of, or at least Stewart Avenue from the Marathon Park, trying to stretch it in such a way that they can end at the Labor Temple and still meet their needs. But they're well aware. Nobody likes the fact that, from a position of fear, based on experiences throughout the country, we now have to change how we do things. But there is no way to safely protect those individuals on the Third Avenue route. We don't have enough staff or vehicles in the city to do that. My overreaching concerns are in the future, as we've now given significant thought to this, as we approve things like what you're looking at right here, where we shut down 3rd Street in the downtown or 4th Street in front of Grand Avenue, that sawhorse barricade that DPW would go put out, all that is a please don't drive through here, because every single vehicle could drive over it. So I think that creates a challenge for us on a smaller scale, like significantly less linear feet, but we're going to need to start using vehicles or something in order to protect everyone that's in a booth selling their artwork as individuals walk around our downtown in the roadway. We can't continue to operate the way that we have before. And I think one of the interesting things that Todd found when he was researching this is he talked to one community and they'd say, why are you guys doing this? Like, we can't go to our council as a police department and deal with this. That's why we had our DPW do it, because they're the favorites. And then you talk to another community that's like, you don't want your DPW going to talk to your council. You got to have your cops do it. And we're fortunate here that we have a good working relationship with all the above. Eric and I joked about, like, neither of us feel like we're on the bad list, that we can't come talk to you about a challenge. But the reality is that as much as we're looking at it from a police department standpoint, from a public safety standpoint, and what we hope to never have to go deal with, these low-frequency, high-risk events, the fact of the matter is, if there were a purchase made and it's going to be stored at DPW, it's probably going to be deployed by DPW staff, and so it's a rarity that we have the DPW director with us at a public health and safety meeting. But, that's why Eric's here, because it's going to involve, it's not the police department that are going to have officers going out deploying this. We're just kind of discussing replacing sawhorses with vehicle stopping pieces of equipment.
No, I think that point's well taken. I think that, it really almost doesn't matter who asks. It's my understanding that the city's insurance company a number of years ago offered training and put out some information on what it actually takes to, protect special events. And, that was, maybe at least in part what planted the seeds for the bollards that we've already put up. One concern that I've always had in terms of event safety, we've talked about staffing for events. We're trying to manage that cost now. But, what really are the municipal liability risks when everyone knows there's a risk. We just saw the 3 news clips at the start of the presentation. We all know that there's a risk to that, for that type of danger to occur, really only takes once. So once you're aware of a possibility and you then do nothing, if that occurs, where does that leave us? It leaves us in a bad spot with our citizens, with victims, with victim families. And so I have some serious concerns about our ability to secure routes where vehicular access is possible. So, I mean, I'd like to see us make an ask for CIP and have it properly ranked and scored as far as what that ask is and how much of it you would get. I think just based on the cost, it's possible it could take more than one request, or it would have to almost be a phased purchase, just because of the sheer amount of projects and the cost of every other project that typically shows up in there. But, I mean, I think the concern is valid.
So just a couple, like you brought up our insurance company, which is currently CIVMIC, Cities and Villages Mutual Insurance Company. And so quarterly or so, I get invited to a law enforcement training that involves chiefs from all the departments that are insured. One recently that I attended virtually was about special events. And the norms, the professional norms that have existed forever in putting on a special event are changing when that training includes the use of vehicle stopping equipment like was shown to you in the presentation today. Having drone and staff that are monitoring the event the entire time, that are checking rooftops, because we didn't go down the path of how many situations where you put a large group of people together and one individual that wants to cause harm with a firearm that has an elevated position. And then the norm, at least as it appeared to me listening to all these departments that were really representing, call it slightly south of Highway 10 all the way south, where these agencies are investing in the training and in the equipment necessary that when you're going to put several thousand people in one location, that you have sniper teams deployed and law enforcement that are trained in that. Again, none of these things are here being asked for at this point. This is us simply saying the rules are changing when it comes to special events. And I think to your point, every single one of these events receives an approval to hold the event by the council.
Yep.
And these are not unknown threats to us with, and then what is law enforcement's professional response? These are our concerns, that this is phase 1 and let's have a conversation about it.
Right. And I think that's how we started too with talking about, how we charge events, which we've talked about for a number of years, how we staff events, how many people it takes to staff an event based on its estimated attendance. We've had that conversation in here. I mean, this is really like a next logical step, I feel like, and I think those discussions, either between us and finance and the CIP committee, those conversations make sense, from a public safety standpoint. Committee members, questions or thoughts? Go ahead, Lou.
I just had one thought, and this could be discussed further on down the road. But is there any, maybe we could also look into something more permanent for our downtown, where something, like they had in New Orleans that didn't work, where they had those steel things that come up from the street. Our roads are narrow enough, maybe where we could probably just do one on every corner or something. I just
some
thought,
kind of pop-ups?
yeah, pop-up, that, if that, because our downtown, with the 400 block being used as, and, with the 400 block, the Art in the Park, all the events we have downtown, it would be, I don't know if it'd be cost effective to have those pop-ups, but it certainly would be over time more cost effective, I would think, than probably having to move temporary barriers back and forth. So that's just my thoughts for the future. Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess that discussion certainly could be had. I think that amongst our staff that's investigating this, one concern would be how that product tolerates ice and snow and road salt over time. Does it corrode? Does
That
it
was my
seize
thought
up?
too,
Does
yeah.
it? Yeah. I mean, what happens with that? And then when you integrate that into your infrastructure, Scott Street's a connecting highway. So anything you do to that that's non-conventional, I'm sure that you are going to need DOT approval. So, or you might. And so that's always, it's just another step in the process too. But I think as we start to investigate, like what solutions, what type of solutions make sense, I think as a staff, they can sift through those options and kind of like whittle them down to, figure out by June, if you want to ask for something for the 2026 CIP, what that would be and what that cost would be, and, how much of that goal you want to try to meet. If you do a full ask and then, preface that ask with the fact that, it could be something that's purchased, say, in thirds over 3 years. That's what we did with radio replacement. Like, if we can't get it all at once, maybe you could work a deal with the committee for a phased purchase. So, doesn't happen here. We're kind of the idea committee, but the money part would come from the other two. But I think there's good conversations to be had. Anything else, or any other comments on event security? I think this is a timely discussion to have. We're well enough in advance of the CIP process for 2026 to, at least kick around some of these ideas. And we know that we're at the cusp of the event season. So for the 2025 event season, we don't have the time. We're going to have to use the old methods for the rest of this year. But as far as what works, and then like even where to deploy it, if you did something in a phased approach, I'm sure that you would deploy your new stuff to the most susceptible areas, and the logistics of that. I think that we have a great team that's capable of figuring out how to use the tools, even if we have to purchase the tools over time. Go ahead.
I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this. I think it's good information just so you have, again, a foundational understanding of what some of these technologies are. And I certainly didn't want to come across as like alarmist and thinking like, hey, the sky is falling kind of a thing. But we recognize these tragedies are happening. What I think is sadly a greater likelihood is due to medical impairment or a drug or alcohol impairment, someone that isn't acting with a malicious intent, but somebody, again, is maybe experiencing, we have had close calls of those kind in the past, and, thankfully, we've been fortunate that it hasn't happened where a person, say, having a seizure or experiencing something like that is, didn't drive into a crowd, but I think that the greater likelihood also lies there, so it's something also for us to consider.
Right, for sure. Well, and I think that, it's definitely a discussion worth having. And I think that as a society in general, I think anyone even watching this meeting is going to know that there's times that as a public, we are just more aware of our surroundings. If you rewind a couple decades, you didn't sit in a crowd and wonder where the exits were or wonder what you would do if. And I think now you kind of do, when you're in these big open areas and stuff, I think you think about things that people didn't think of before because some of this stuff has become all too common. And, I don't think that we get the luxury of assuming that it could never happen in our community. We certainly hope it doesn't. But, I think even though it's a discussion that you wish you didn't have to have, I think it's good that we have it, So, with that, we'll place the presentation on file. I think if the committee is amenable to it, we can direct the staff to work together to figure out, what, if anything, they'd like to ask for as a CIP request in terms of, maybe equipment they don't have now that could really help. I think that at some point, if a drone upgrade is necessary, I think that's a secondary discussion, but the stuff you don't have feels more important than the stuff you do have right now. Carol?
I just want to say thank you for, being proactive with this. I will say that last summer I was in Colorado and with my daughter and her fiance, and we were walking along a street, and then there was a cultural fest and food, and because of the ethnicity, we were going to go. And we were standing there, and it's the first time this really happened to me, but my daughter's fiance and I both just happened at the same time to say, like, we could be targets here. And I've never felt that before. So, I just appreciate it because it's a different world. And we didn't stay right there just because of the prevalence of some of the acts that have been done throughout the country. So anyway, I appreciate that.
Well, and I was glad that you brought up the fact that you had reached out to the folks from Cheyenne last summer. I was out there for their largest event of the year, which is Cheyenne Frontier Days, and I saw their stuff. So, I didn't think about it in the moment, but when you mentioned that they had them, we did see those out there. They have a parade every morning, And in the largest cross streets, that stuff was out there, so. All right, so with that, we'll place that item on file. We can certainly revisit the discussion if we need to, but if not, CIP and Finance, we know what the timeline looks like for that. Item number 7 is the Tavern Activities Report for the month of February, which is in your packets. Does anybody have any questions on anything that they've seen in the report? Go ahead, Lou.
I do. I'm looking at the points assessed now. Was Matt's 101 Pub assessed 100 points for the one incident that's in there, or did he already have points? And 2 was Hiawatha Lounge also assessed the 50 points for that one, or did they already have points on their record? That's my question.
Sure, to the best of my knowledge, and I'll just clarify with our lieutenant responsible for that Hiawatha was issued points because the owner was cited for disorderly conduct. The 101 Pub from their incident, which is the one thing I wanted to speak to, we were very pleased with ownership and working with us in that situation. We had an individual, really relatively unprovoked, get stabbed multiple times while they were in there. I'm really proud of our staff that did an excellent job. That individual was in custody. There's a case that I feel very confident in against that individual, and one of the reasons we were able to move forward so quickly was because of the collaboration with I assume it's Matt, the owner.
Yep.
And so I heard feedback of great work by your officers, as well as appreciation for bar ownership and management in working through that situation. So I would be surprised if there were points assessed, but I'll confirm that for you.
Okay.
Yeah, since it was highlighted, I just thought I'd ask that question. Thank you.
They're at 100. First degree reckless endangerment causing injury was the violation. I too, though, typically with that level of cooperation and quick action, we've not really seen that to the owner before. So yeah, I guess if you could look into that one, would be helpful. We have an enhancer on the points for weapons. But yeah, I mean, that definitely would be worth knowing a little bit more about. But I mean, that was the more shocking one that was on the report. Anything else on the report that you wanted to run through with us?
No, just that one of the issues a question we had that we were going to bring forward, and then we did our own homework and got our own answer, was how are we assigning points and what role, if any, does the committee have in that? And so finally made it to the last sentence that said, it's the chief or his or her designee that assigns the points based on the activities of the month.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering whether, hey, you had this type of incident in your establishment, and so we're going to assess 100 points, and I'd want to rethink that and
Yeah.
potentially bring back a conversation to this committee next month just to talk about how we apply those points and make sure we're meeting your expectation and
Right.
and we're just being reasonable in what we're doing.
From the time we developed the demerit point system, it was always the goal that the committee would not be able to assign or remove points. We delegated that to your department specifically to remove the politics or the political appearance from that process in terms of the assignment of or adjustment of the points, like would be maybe necessary in this situation, depending on what you find out. So, and it's happened before. I think in the past, we found a points assessment that ended up getting walked back for something similar where the owner was super cooperative. So, but yeah, I mean, if you wanted to have that discussion in a future meeting, we can, but we've always tried to receive that report and then not weigh in on, whether or not, I mean, we trust that you guys manage that appropriately, and I think the process with that is more legitimate if we aren't involved in the levying or the reduction, so.
I have one other
Go ahead,
question, too. The noise complaint at Forefathers Pub, obviously that's been neglected because the owners aren't here this month.
Well, right, they've not come forward yet. We were going to put them on the agenda for an update to meet with them again, and they've not brought forward any plan for modifications to the place, and my understanding is they haven't booked a band since they were here. So at least what I've heard from within the neighborhood is it's been all quiet there, but none of the owners have come forward with any sort of modification to make or to change the noise or the vibe there to satisfy the neighboring.
No application for a permit, no nothing.
No.
Okay.
Well, the one they submitted stayed active because we didn't act on it, so it's just kind of in limbo until they develop some type of a plan.
Right.
But we took them off the agenda this month because there was no plan for them to come and appear. So
Okay, thank
as soon
you.
as we hear from them, though, we'll put them on another one. So, okay. Yeah, if they come forward with something and they want to be on the next agenda or a subsequent one, we're happy to entertain that, so. Last item on our report is the community outreach update, and we'll bring up Tracy, welcome.
Thank you. Excuse me. So in front of you is the report from February. Really, the thing that stands out to me, of course, is the community on-call effort. Again, for the month of February, we had to activate 11 days in the month, and we were able to house at our off-site location 148 individuals that would have maybe not had shelter had we not had that happening. So I just want to say thank you for everyone's support on this, because it is saving lives, and we're doing a really good job, and some great collaboration exists because of that. Just an outreach update. I met with 12 individuals. We got somebody housed last month. But I wanted to just reiterate what Matt had said earlier when we met with a few individuals who were formerly housed or formerly homeless, and then those that are currently homeless. And they were, a lot of times I think our unhoused feel like their voices aren't heard. And so as one of my roles in this role as advocacy for those, I want to express a thank you to Chief Barnes for allowing them the opportunity to come in and speak their minds and their thoughts on the process, and they felt very grateful for that opportunity. As a result of that conversation, there has been some actual growth in that particular individual. So the conversations that happened that day, not only were they maybe educational for us, but it was also it also prompted more action on their part to become a little bit more aware and responsible and look for alternative solutions in their own problems. So I just want to, on their behalf, just say thank you to Chief Barnes for allowing them the opportunity. I could have probably brought many, many more to that meeting had we had some time to do that. But for future, I think it's really important for us to know that they do want to be heard, and they very much appreciate the opportunity to be heard. So I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Matt was saying about having the opportunity to meet with them. And I will tell you that we're really, there's been some really great collaboration this month between myself and other organizations, NCAP, for example, Salvation Army. We've had a really great collaboration this month with a family, and so already for the month of March, we've already housed 6 individuals. So, you know, the work continues. We're doing the best we can. Sorry, Matt, if I made my card smoke this month, but we're really doing some great things, and I'm excited to share that I received a call from a social worker at the Cancer Center in Wausau. She had one of our unhoused individuals with stage 4 terminal cancer, and within a week, I was able to get him into housing and get him situated where, in my mind and in my moral compass, it is the right thing to do to make sure that somebody who's suffering to that degree has dignity and has the ability to get appropriate rest and care. So,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, the weather, in this last reporting cycle, it seemed like you couldn't catch a break. So the fact that you've developed such great partnerships out in the community to be able to activate 11 times and have those helpers come to help is just huge. I mean, so much better out in the community than what we had a few years ago where we just couldn't find people. And, you know, when you're out of space, you're out of space. And I think the ability to expand with those partnerships is just huge. I mean, that's fantastic. So thank you for that. Anybody have questions on the report or anything that you've heard from Tracy tonight? Go ahead, Chief.
I just wanted to make an announcement. I know you'll get this in from multiple different angles, but I think we're shooting to have a short agenda item for March 25th, which is a council meeting night. And then everyone is welcome and encouraged to make it a couple blocks over to the Grand Theater, where CPC and their leadership, as well as Bridge Street Mission, and then the Wausau Police Department are co-sponsoring and encouraging the community to come out for a free viewing of the documentary about Americans with no address. And I've watched this. I was very impressed with it. You will see in this numerous different communities varying programming on how to assist the unhoused community and get them stable. But it also really answers the question, or tries to, of how do we end up where we are today? And I think having that background, one, it shows leadership for the entire county board is also going to have a short agenda, and they're invited to attend, as well as the Police and Fire Commission. And as our leaders and policymakers, I think it says something to the community if we can be there in full force, as well as it provides us a lot of information about how do we get where we're at and what things seem to be moving the needle across the country. So I would really love to see the entire council there. And
I think to be proactive, we should post a non-acting quorum agenda for it.
no, I think that's
It's posted?
happening.
Okay, good, because then anybody who wants to go can go. But I think that's important too. We've talked about that also in the other Housing and Homelessness Task Force that United Way is still running. We've talked about that event as well, and a number of those partner agencies also, hoping that their people can attend, so, good stuff. All right, if we have no other questions or comments, we'll place that report on file as well. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion from Watson, is there a second?
Second.
Second from Larson. Members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? No one's ever opposed. We'll see you next time. Thank you, everybody.